So, hello everyone. Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. This one was why I no longer wax cheese. Now, nothing against waxing cheese. I know Tyler was talking about how they do. What did he say last week? He says they wax some, and waxing is good for retaining some of that moisture if you don't want a dry cheese, a really dry cheese. And then, what did he say? A brine drying cheese or something like that. I'll have to learn about that one. But I did do a video a few years ago on waxing cheese and did it a few times. In fact, I did some before I shot the video. And in the video, it was either my second or third run. And so I kept learning better ways to do it as I was going along. And initially, I really liked it. And it was definitely a fun thing to do and to learn. And I recommend everybody give it a try at some point. But I'm going to share why I am not doing it anymore. I'm not saying I never will do it. I mean, it certainly can have its place, but generally speaking, it's not going to be the way I'm going to use for long-term storing cheese where I don't have to use a fridge or freezer. So one of the reasons why is you got the cost of the special wax. It has to be a special kind of wax. You can't use beeswax. That's the most common question people are going to ask, because beeswax, not unless you can mix it with something, and maybe people who wax cheese and have tried it can share. But beeswax, just melting beeswax and using that, it's too brittle. It won't work the same. It has to have a certain amount of flexibility to it once it's cooled and solidified. It has to be at least a little bit flexible. And that wax can get rather expensive. Now, yes, you can keep reusing it. You got to clean it off first. And because it's going to get oil on the inside of it from the cheese. It is also a rather messy process. Again, it is fun to do. At least first couple times was fun, but it is kind of messy. And, you got to have all this equipment I say all this equipment, but I just use stuff I already had on hand. But I think once you dedicate that equipment to waxing your cheese, you're just going to want to have it be just for that. So you'll likely want to buy separate equipment, pans, etc., just for waxing the cheese. Now, if that's something you like and you want to keep doing it for certain, then yeah, not a big deal. And in my personal opinion, unless you don't care how strong the cheese ends up, it's really only good for like 4 to 6 months, in my personal opinion. Now, the first ones I did, I let them age 4 to 6 months, and they're going to get stronger after you wax them. What you're doing is you're not storing them in the fridge, you're not storing them in the freezer, you're storing them on a shelf. And they will age, they will just get stronger and stronger and stronger. And the first ones I did, I really liked after like 4 to 6 months, even though I typically like a more mild cheese just to eat. I was surprised at how much I really liked the taste of that cheddar after 4 months. It was really good. The thing I liked about it is that by aging it getting stronger, is it made it better for making things like macaroni and cheese or making the cheese powder, which I'll get to. Because having it be a little bit stronger, when you cook it in that way, if you're using a mild cheese, you just don't get that same cheesy flavor in something like homemade macaroni and cheese or a cheese sauce. You do want a sharper cheese. So aging the cheese, especially if you're making your own cheese from your own dairy animals, then it's a way you can get that stronger taste. However, I had some that I had forgotten about. I had put up and I was like, oh, I forgot I had this, and it sat for like a year. And, there was nothing wrong with it per se. It's like it never really spoils, but it will keep getting stronger. And it was so strong. Now, I've never smelled, what's that cheese that Limburg, is it? No, is that right? Anyway, I remember it from cartoons being really, really strong smelling and making people pass out. So I can imagine Limburger. Okay, that's what I was thinking, but I'm like, is that right? Am I saying that right? I can imagine that must be what that smells like, because I did that with cheddar and it was so strong. And I thought, well, it might still be good for me to dehydrate and powder up and use to make a sauce. Even then, it was still way too strong, and I didn't like the flavor that it added to things. So, so if you're making your own cheese from your own dairy animals, yeah, I would say wax it or age it in another way if you're wanting a sharper taste. But if you're wanting to do it for long-term storage, I don't think it's the way to go. I mean, you'd want to be working through that within, 4 to 6 months, maybe longer depending on your tastes. But for me, to put up cheese outside of the fridge or freezer, I don't even freeze cheese anymore. If I have room in the only reason I'll freeze cheese, I sound like a Dr. Seuss book. These 3 fleas flew through freezy trees, whatever. Cheese trees. But anyway, the only reason I'll freeze the cheese is because I might possibly have a little more room in my freezer, but that's very rare. So now if it's all packaged, if I'm buying the cheese and it's all packaged up, it's not going to spoil. I refrigerate it and then just work through a package at a time. See, I can cheese according to Cat's Cradle's instructions. So there's that. There's the canning. I haven't tried it yet, but Cat's Cradle, she was I think the first person I saw. I used to watch her back when she was putting out videos and before I started my own channel. You can cheese, so that's one way you can make it shelf stable and preserve that flavor if you don't want it super sharp. But what I like to do is to dehydrate it and then powder it. And that, you vacuum seal it in a jar, it lasts for years. And I would say longer, but just from my experience, I can definitely say years. I've had some vacuum sealed in jars for years, still as good as the day I put it in there when I went to open it. And that cheese powder can be used to make all kinds of different things. You can use it to make a macaroni and cheese. You can use it to make a cheese sauce or fondue. It's just a matter of adding water and cooking it for a little bit. And obviously not too much because I think it might separate. But I made a cheese sauce just by adding water and cooking it, and it was good. And I would assume if you cook it in milk, it would probably turn out even richer. Because here's the one thing about the dehydrating is, and this is why having a sharper cheese to dehydrate with is better, because it does, when it's drying, what I do is I let it sit on because you have to do the same thing when you're waxing it. You got to let it sit for a couple of days and let the whey strain out of it. And a lot of the oil is going to come out too. Well, with that oil, unfortunately, it goes a lot of flavor. So if you're using a mild cheddar, you're going to lose even more flavor. That's why having it aged or at least buying a sharp cheese to powder is going to be a better idea. And so that's what I was, powdering up is the sharp cheese initially that I was buying, but then trying a more mild cheddar and then aging it, but forgot about it and let it age too long. And then it was bad. I mean, it didn't spoil. It was just too strong. So anyway, that is my favorite way to put it up for long term, but for just working through, I just keep it in the fridge. I'm not worried about it. Now, coming back to the wax cheese, the other thing that I had issue with, not with all of it, but with some of it, where I didn't get enough of the water out of the cheese. Sometimes you'll be surprised, especially when you're buying a softer cheese, like a mozzarella, jack, or cheddar, is it has a lot of water in it. And so this is why you got to let it sit on, because I learned this from Cat's Cradle as well. you put it on a rack over a pan and you let it sit for, I can't remember how long it is, but you're trying to get as much of the water out of the cheese as possible before you wax it. You want it to be fairly dry. You're not trying to make a dry cheese like Parmesan. You're just trying to get it more dry, because what will happen in storage once it's waxed is a lot of that moisture will just keep coming out of the cheese, and it will build up inside that wax, and then it will cause the wax to split, and the wax is what prevents mold growth. And then once it splits, you're going to get moldy cheese. I did have that happen with some. Now, like I was always taught growing up, I mean, I wonder, I'm guessing by today's standards and the way people freak out about everything, they probably will throw a whole brick of cheese out if it has a little bit of mold. Well, with bread, yeah, usually once you get, some bread and it's been all in a bag, if some of the bread starts to mold, all of it will taste like mold. Cheese isn't the same way. You just cut the mold off and you work through the rest of the cheese. It's not that hard. You don't have to waste all your cheese. So that's all I did, was I just cut the moldy parts off, and it was still really good. But it was a little disappointing, and it can be messy if you're not expecting that. So you want to make sure, if you do choose to wax some cheese and you go to store, I stored mine in boxes, and I would try to have them stacked so they could also not be touching each other. I suggest putting a towel or something you don't mind getting ruined at the bottom of the box so that it can catch a lot of that water if it comes out of the cheese because you didn't get enough out. I suggest that no matter how well you think you did. Because my first batch, I don't think that happened. I think it was like the second or third batch I did where I ended up not getting all the water out. So I made a cheesy dad joke the other day. I better not leave my blue cheese out of the refrigerator or it might mold, LOL. Oh, and see, and that's something too. There are certain types of cheeses like blue cheese, Roquefort, it's a special kind of mold that's actually, I think, injected into the cheese and then, the spores, so that it will do that and add that flavor and color. And honestly, growing up, my favorite salad dressing, even as a young girl, was blue cheese. I loved it. Or Roquefort, either one. I always thought they were the same. Isn't Roquefort just the French name for it? I don't know. So anyway, those are some concerns you're going to want to think about if you decide to wax cheese. I'm sure with practice you'll get better. And so my better options for me personally is freezing, refrigerating in the package, or dehydrating and powdering. And I'm glad somebody did bring up Cat's Cradle's canning, because I forgot to write that one down. I really do hope and pray you guys have a lovely week. And thanks for coming in. Take care. And God bless.